Summer in the Hudson Valley. Welcome to a special meeting of the Planning Board for this evening, September 28, 2017. And please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you, everyone. Got two things on our special meeting agenda this evening. I'd also like to mention that starting on Monday, we're going to have a new town planner.
Yes, we will.
And so we can welcome, I'm sure Eric can, and we can all welcome the extra help in the planning department and getting paperwork through and reviews done and all that stuff. So her name is Kristen
Gaynor.
Kristen Gaynor. She'll be joining us on Monday. So that's the good news. Application number 1, McDonald Heights Town Center Site Plan. Planning Board to accept the DEIS as complete and continuation of a site plan review of the McDonald Heights Town Center project, the proposed mixed-use development, including 288 to 350 developed residential dwelling units in apartments and townhouses, 85,000 to 180,000 square feet of mixed commercial development, recreation area and associated parking. 928, 932, 935, and 936 Dutchess Turnpike and Victory Lane Zone, MHC McDonald Heights Center, and IH Heavy Industrial District, 60.87 acres. It's Type 1 action, Meadowview Properties LLC, Kirchhoff Properties LLC, and Industrial Retro LLC owners. So, and actually we have two very large projects on the agenda tonight for accepting the DEIS, and the second one is a planning board recommendation to the town board. And it's very unusual that we get two very large projects coming in at the same time. And I think it's a testament to our town that people want to invest their money and their investors' money in our town to make it a better place, and hopefully, better for the residents and everybody that's here, and themselves, of course, because they're in business to make a profit. So that said, Rich?
Obviously, as you indicated, we're here to discuss the draft environmental impact statement and its level of completeness. We're hopeful the board has had an opportunity to go through it and raise any questions that you may have, and hopefully we can answer them today so that you can determine it to be complete and we can move forward to schedule a public hearing.
Okay, thank you. Neil?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Rich has indicated, the purpose of the meeting is for the board to discuss whether to accept the draft EIS that was provided a couple of weeks ago as complete. The completeness determination is kind of at its simplest level a statement by the board that it's compared the contents and the discussions and the analyses in the DEIS, compared it against the approved scoping document, and determined that the analyses and discussions and conclusions are complete in that they address what the scoping document says you're supposed to address. It's not a statement necessarily that each of the board members agrees with the analyses, the conclusions of the DEIS, because that's for the public comment period. Want to make it clear that the board as a whole and the individual members, assuming that the board accepts the DEIS as complete tonight, you still have an opportunity, as does the public, to comment further on the document as part of the public hearing process that would also be part of the determination of completeness. So you've got several things going on. You've got the discussion about the document. We have Val Monastra and her colleague here tonight to talk about the DEIS. If you've got questions about any sections of it, by all means, ask the questions. And again, even if there are parts of it maybe that some of the members may not agree with, perhaps some of the conclusions that might be drawn, those are items that can be examined going forward. But this is just like I say, it's a statement by the board that the content of the DEIS matches up with the items to be addressed in the scope, and it's done so at a level of detail sufficient that the board thinks that the project, the DEIS, should be made public. If there are additional questions, if the board has a contrary opinion. We believe that at the staff level, certainly consultant level, we believe that the document is ready for acceptance and public release. But if the board feels that it is not, we will have to discuss with the board, the areas to be further addressed and try it again at a later date. But again, staff and consultants feel that the document is ready for public release. But if the members have questions, again, we have Val and her colleague, and if there are any particular questions for the applicant, those are to be discussed tonight.
Thank you. Let's start with Andy, our town engineer. Any comments you want to make?
Well, I'll just say that we reviewed the water, sewer, and stormwater sections of the DEIS, and we found that we're comfortable with the fact that it's complete. It's
That's good. Thank you.
all good.
Go around the board. I think we'll just do it. We'll go around the board. We'll start with Peter. How's that?
I read the document. All the questions seem to have been answered. As Neil commented, we don't necessarily agree with all the answers, but I believe the document, as it's presented, is complete. We do have a couple of quick questions. One is the treatment plant. Who owns the treatment plant?
Today, it's owned by the Poughkeepsie Business Park.
Not by you.
Not yet, no.
Now, what arrangements have you made to acquire that treatment plant?
We have an understanding with the owner of the Poughkeepsie Business Park that we are going to acquire that facility and expand it, and they'll have the capacity that they need in it.
The reason I asked that question, I think it's obvious, without the treatment plant and without your using the alternate, the pump station on the north side of the property, you really don't have a project. How do we really go forward without some kind of a letter of intent or a letter of understanding between you and the owner of the facility, which is essentially going to make this project doable?
Your question's, well pointed. We could certainly try, and I can speak with the owners of Poughkeepsie Business Park and get a correspondence from them indicating their intent to convey the facility to us.
Would it need to be more than just their intent?
Can I ask Lisa her opinion on legal, if I might?
Well, that's for tonight's purposes. I'm assuming it's complete. For going forward on with the EEIS, I would think obviously before the board would give its final approval, you would need to have that acquired. But since there's a sufficient time between that date and today's date, I think that a letter of intent, if that satisfies the board for the short term, that's fine. I certainly wouldn't give any final approvals until you had the.
Absolutely.
Right, but I think that kind of highlights the difference between a comment on the EIS versus the completeness review. You got to get it nailed down.
I understand.
Yeah.
But if it were my dime, I would want to have that letter of intent, even before I got to this point, because without it and without your using the alternate on your own property to access the pump station by Concord Village, you're pretty much out of business. So, just a word to the wise.
Absolutely understood, and we'll address that.
Yeah, we couldn't possibly give approval unless you have acquired that and gotten everybody to agree this is what we're going to do.
Yep.
Good question.
Also, with regard to since you have elected not to use the available municipal sewer, if you could just briefly, since you're going to be putting about 30 million gallons of treated water into the Wappingers Creek, if you could just put in a short paragraph to explain why you're not using the facility that's available for use.
You mean the current one at the Poughkeepsie Business Park?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's undersized.
Well, the access to the water, to the pump station is right in front of Concord Village.
Okay, that's the other side.
Yes, and they have an easement to that pump station, a deeded easement. And they've elected not to use that deeded easement to the pump station, which carries over onto Van Wagner Road and goes to the Poughkeepsie plant.
Well, I don't think that decision, and we'll examine that going forward. I don't think that decision's been firmly made, because we did include a brief discussion of using that as an alternative to keep that option open.
Just some,
You haven't closed the door, in other words.
no, we haven't closed the
Right.
door on it at all. But we're further evaluating the design of the upgrade to the facilities, to the treatment facilities. We will be addressing, the acquisition of that facility, and we'll provide more clarity with respect to the alternate
That's all.
versus
Just
that
so
facility.
we can memorialize that it does exist, and you have opted not to use it for whatever reason.
Or does it have capacity?
Right, I also think for the DEIS, we wanted to, we looked at the wastewater treatment plant is the, I guess, the highest, the option that we would like, the developer would like to go ahead with, and that's why we incorporated it into the DEIS. But through the FEIS and the findings, if there are alternatives or a decision has been made one way or the other, those will be enumerated in those documents.
Right, yeah, but I think he was right, we need to monument it in some.
Memorialize.
Yeah.
The other thing is, with regard to the sewer, is at some point, we have to know, we've had an application requesting 288 to 350 residential units. This document suggests 390 residential units, and the reason that's important is because, for instance, in the traffic study, the numbers have to be consistent. We have a traffic study that's using 93,000 square feet of commercial space to determine traffic flow, and you're requesting up to 180,000 square feet. So it's somewhere in the process, so that we can be sure that we're getting correct numbers. You have to firm up exactly what your final plan is in terms of either the number of residential units or how much commercial space you're going to be developing, so we can get, we have good aim.
Yeah, understood, and I think we actually did. We never went back and revised the original application. The 288 to 350 is what we were anticipating in the residential buildings. I believe we have 336 in the residential buildings, and then the balance are over the commercial. But the preferred alternative, the proposed action in the DEIS reflects the 390 total residential units. I believe it's a total of 122,100 square feet of non-residential, of which 93,500 are actual commercial uses. That's actually how everything was evaluated: the water usage, the wastewater flows, the traffic trip generation, the population impacts, the school age impacts, are all based upon the preferred action that's identified in the
Okay,
DEIS.
so you think 93,000 is probably going to be a reasonable figure?
And
more or less.
93,500 is what we have in the application right now. We're addressing the impacts associated with that. We're not going to propose to do more than that, without, obviously, without revisiting the impact that it would have.
Last comment, again, is on the traffic. It's not, I don't want to belabor this, but, you have on the intersection levels of service, you have 114 data points. 25% of them are levels D, E, and F. You have level C, you have 38. I mean, you've got almost 60% of your data points are level C through F. And it doesn't show a lot of improvement, even with the mitigation beyond that. So I think it's something as I mentioned to you before, I know we're going to be taking a very close look at the traffic there and whatever mitigation is possible. You have a conflict there, science versus common sense. To look at it, you would think that there's really nothing that you could accomplish by any of the mitigation, but we're willing to have take a close look at it. That's all I have.
Great. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Carl?
Yeah, that was one of my biggest concerns was you did a very thorough job on the DEIS. I think all the scoping questions were answered. To start that off, traffic, as Peter mentioned, there's a lot of LOS, E's, and F's there. I mean, a lot of them were bad to begin with. As you know, Route 44 is very busy. So I think traffic is going to be one of the main issues that comes up over as we develop the plan further. But I think you've already done some things like the left turn lanes in and out of the main entrance and the connection to the Concord Village Drive. It gives you that alternate. I mean, I don't know if there's a way to, from a traffic study, you say that we wound up with a 200 second LOS of F at Concord Village Drive, but they can come out at the other light too as well. So I don't know if there's a way to say what's the effective LOS of that. If more people use it coming out. And certainly coordinating signal timing with Barnes Drive and others up and down the road to keep traffic flowing. You said there's a reduced speed limit possibility, for people to do parallel parking and whatnot. Is there a target speed you were thinking of, or?
I'm not quite sure what target. I think we were thinking 35 mile an hour through that segment. That's all, I believe, before the DOT at this point, to have the on-street parking on 44 and the reduction of the speed limit, so.
And along with traffic, I had a concern about the construction entrances and stuff. I guess the one that comes off Victory Lane is great for the east side, but the construction entrance you show is right at the main entrance of 44. So that that's going to have to be monitored carefully, dragging mud out onto 44. I think I read with the cut and fill that you did not expect to be importing a lot of fill for this project, but
I believe that's what our engineer, Jeff Cantelmo, has indicated. I think he's, if I remember correctly, it's 55,000 cubic yards of material, I believe is the total. Is that correct, Jeff?
For importing and not much exported then. Right. So that's not bad overall for a project this size.
It's like, what the hell are they thinking here?
So that's just something to be concerned about. And I had a question, last question I had right now was on your phasing plan. I'm glad you put that plan up there, 5 phases. Is there a proposed spacing between phases for example, how does phase 1 become operational with the entrance there while you're trying to construct phase 2, if that's still a construction entrance?
Well, the construction entrance, and we've been actually talking with site engineering about it. The construction entrance will obviously move once a portion of the project is completed.
Okay,
the construction entrance
so
will be relocated so that we don't have a conflict between the users of the site and the construction traffic.
Okay, great. I guess that's all I have for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ben?
From what I see, it's pretty thorough. I think it's a great job. I like this project. These guys brought up some of the things that I was thinking about, and right at this point for this acceptance, I don't have any other questions right now.
Thank you. I had one question. I was reading in there about Cherry Hill Drive. They're going to be doing something along down there.
Actually, we may want to refer to our traffic consultant here.
Cherry Hill Drive.
Yes, Cherry Hill Drive right now.
How does that all tie into the rest of this?
Well, what happens when the analysis is completed right now is that Cherry Hill Drive, the levels of service get worse. And so in order to start looking at mitigation of that, it's kind of a reallocation of the lanes that are there right now, so that the approaches from Cherry Hill Drive and the plaza can operate concurrently instead of operating at 2 different times, which allows a great deal of more time for the main line, which is what kind of improves level of service at that area. So it would be kind of a restriping and slight realignment maybe of the approaches.
Okay, good. That's a much needed thing anyway.
It would definitely be helpful.
Be a good thing to have today.
Yeah, it'd be good to have it today, but that's an example of where another problem can be mitigated a little bit with this project coming in and so on. So
That's right.
good. Thank you. I had the opportunity to drive up to Dutchess Community College today. We're down by where Little George Street used to be. They're putting a roundabout. That's a good example of not how to do a project when people have to get through it to get to where they're going. So that's all I'm going to say. So that would not be acceptable here. So.
Okay, nothing new at this point. It looks, I like the project, what you've done, and I think a lot of the issues have been raised already, so good luck.
Nicole?
So I had a few questions, although a couple of them have already been answered. You talked about parking, and you talked about parking garages. How many cars do you think are going to fit in your garages? It looked like you were looking at, what, 392 spaces?
Well, the garages
total?
themselves, I believe, I think we have 4 garage buildings, so 40, that's 10 spaces in each garage building. So
spaces
there's
in
only
each
40 that
garage.
would actually have access to a garage.
Okay. Okay. Also, I had another question, and it might be a little too early to ask this question, but there was a mention of putting in a bank with a drive-through. As far as that's concerned, how would you configure that within the space so that we would have good flow of traffic?
Well, the bank is located on a pad to the, I guess, the north on the west side of Route 44.
Okay.
And it shares that location with the daycare that we're proposing. There's a right in and right out in that location that would allow people to go in, use the bank, and then come back out again, or drop off at the daycare. They also have access from the signalized intersection. So if you were to go to the bank and you want to go back to, let's call it the north, you can go through the community and come back out through the signalized intersection. So you'd have the access to the signal to be able to make the left turn a little bit more conveniently.
Okay. All right, great, thank you.
That it?
That
For
was
now?
it. Yeah, that was it for now.
Okay,
Yeah.
any other?
I have one. One of the things that we'd, particularly Val, and I know Rich and his project team, had been speaking with DOT, and we've had actually a couple of meetings through this process. Where do we stand most recently with DOT? I mean, they're going to get a copy of the DEIS, but I believe they've already got a copy of the traffic report, do they not?
That's
Have they
right.
commented on that?
They have not yet commented on the traffic study, but they have received it a couple weeks ago now.
Okay.
And we've also been able to provide them with all the actual analyses, which is what.
Yeah, they were looking for the hard data to
likes.
be able to do.
Yes, so
yeah.
they've got everything they need, and they've had it for a couple weeks.
Okay, okay.
Good. Any other questions, anybody? They're here. Okay.
So in terms of the, sort of the next steps, if the board is in agreement and willing to accept the DEIS as complete, you have a resolution. I've included the actual notice that would travel with the DEIS as well. But you would be doing several things in addition to accepting it as complete. You would also be setting the public hearings for the October meeting date, which is I think the 19th. But we would also be setting concurrent public hearings and site plan, special use permit, and subdivision as well. So you're going to have 4 public hearings held, concurrently that night. People could comment on the DEIS and any other aspect of the project. If the board decides to close the public hearing that night, we would hold the written comment period up. The rules say no less than 10 days after the close of the public comment period. We may just want to extend that, right to the, October 31st anyway, just to give a couple of extra days. And that would close that comment period on the DEIS. We would compile all of the written comments received, as well as we'll have a stenographer at the public hearing. Val and Eric and I and Rich and Jeff, we will kind of sift and go through, kind of organize those comments and start to work on preparing appropriate responses. And then at some point, we will be coming back to this board for a completeness determination on a proposed final EIS sometime after that. But the public hearings on the site plan, special permit, and the subdivision would be adjourned kind of indefinitely.
Right.
To a later date, and those would be left open. So, but that's the basic process.
I'm happy with that. My only question is, would it be advisable that we just put a note somewhere that the applicant is going to provide us with some documentation that they are going to have access to the treatment plant? Because without it, the project cannot move forward.
I think that we're going to end up handling that as part of a comment. I mean, we'll make a note of it tonight. We'll basically treat that, frankly, as a comment to be addressed in the final EIS going forward. Because you're correct. I mean, without access to sewer, they don't have a project. but we will certainly close the loop on that. I think that that's a valid comment, but we would handle that as basically the first comment on, to be addressed in the final EIS. That would be my proposal tonight. But we'll make sure that it gets addressed.
I just thought of one other question about the, I guess the stormwater is going to be looked at by the engineer very closely, but, you have the stormwater pond on the side right over here. Just want to make sure that's not going to affect all those neighboring houses in any negative way. I think that some of those neighbors had said there was some flooding in that area already, I believe.
We actually think it will help them with that.
So that was the question I had. Will that actually even help improve what's there? So that's, and you're regrading that hill in the back there, so that it all comes in together there.
So this is the full.
Okay, I was just making sure it was in there.
Yeah, I'm sorry, so you have the wrong one, so the recitation is
Okay, well, there it is.
Well,
here.
Yep, okay, I was just making sure it was in the record, so we had that.
Always important
Everybody.
the chairman have the correct paperwork.
Yeah. That would be nice.
any further comments? I think we're good. I move that the planning board adopt the attached determination of completeness and public hearing notices in the matter of McDonald Heights Town Center.
Do we have a second? It's been moved and seconded that the planning board adopt the attached determination of completeness and public hearing notices in the matter of McDonald Heights Town Center. Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Okay, thank you. Thank
you.
I didn't have that resolution. Neil could provide me a copy. I want to make sure the dates for the public hearings, plural, were in there, and it's all set, so we're good. Okay, thank you, guys. We'll see you in October.
Yep.
It's been a pleasure.
Don't know why I don't have
Phoebe's there in case.
He's the only one that got it, I think.
Oh, I don't know why you didn't have it.
Okay, that's it. It's all right.
Neil.
That's it.
How are you? Good. As we get closer and closer. No problem. I'm asking those good questions there, sir. I've been watching. I've been able to make it, but I've been watching. I like the questions, Travis. Thank you very much.
That's why I get the big money.
You bet. Thank you all very much.
And we may get you a raise.
I don't know, Nick.
Okay, application number 2, Hudson Heritage Project. Planning Board recommendation to the Town Board on the Development Master Plan with regard to the proposed project for redevelopment of the former Hudson River State Hospital, 3532 North Road, US Route 9 Zone, HRDD, Historic Revitalization Development District, 156.19 acres, type 1 action, EFG and DRA Heritage LLC owners. Now I have the right resolution.
Yeah, now you got the right one.
Did you have the one from McDonald Heights? No. You didn't have it either.
You didn't have it either? Okay.
Yeah, but. At any rate, water under the bridge. Okay, hi.
Good morning.
George?
Good evening.
Nick?
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I just want to kind of jump in here. This is, as you pointed out earlier, it's a little unusual. We have 2 large projects with, that we've been working on, 2 environmental impact statements over the course of the past year. And Eric and I were chatting a little while ago, and between the 2 of us, we managed to confuse each other when we talk EISs as to which one we're talking about. So there's been, that's just him and me. Anyway.
No, I think the confusion kind of runs.
Yeah, right. Anyway, we also have with tonight Special Counsel David Cooper. The action before the board, the town board has accepted the final EIS as complete. They did so last Wednesday. No, not yesterday, but the week before. So that document is up on the town website as of today. We had a kind of a mix-up internally. It should have been up several days ago, but it's now up and available for review. What that does is acceptance of the EIS sends the matter into basically a 10-day quiet period. for public consideration of the document. Some municipalities treat it as an additional comment period. The staff had recommended to the town board that they not do that, simply accept it as complete. The public can comment, they can write in, they can do whatever they want as they usually do, but we will not be providing additional responses to that. We think it's time to sort of move on with try to close out the environmental property review process, which the next steps would be to hammer out the finding statement. We're hoping to have that done in time to give to the town board at their October 18th meeting. And assuming that the town board agrees with the contents of the finding statement and adopts it that night, then they can go ahead and they can adopt the zoning text amendment, which this board has already made its referral on, and then approve the development master plan. So that's kind of going forward. What you're being asked to do tonight is the planning part of the development master plan process is to have the planning board issue its recommendation on the master development plan itself, which is what you're looking at here on the boards. If there are particular items that the board wishes the town board to take a further look at, maybe some recommendations for some additional changes, now would be the time to do it, because once the town board has approved the development master plan, this is kind of locks us into what we're going to be doing going forward in terms of, sort of at the the 5,000 foot level where things are going to go and the densities and things like that. One of the things that the planning board will be challenged to do once the town board has made issued its approval of the master development plan is when it comes back for detailed site plan review, we will be constantly looking at the discrete pieces of the site plan, because it's coming in phases, and making sure that it matches up with what the town board has approved. So that's going to be part of that process. But right now, it's time for the planning board to weigh in and issue a recommendation. You can recommend approval with changes, or recommend denial. Year 3.
Thank you. Let me see. I'm going to turn it over to the applicant, and maybe he'll do a presentation a little bit for some of the new board members. And as kind of a refresher for the rest of us, it's been a little while since we've talked about this, so welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Nick Manoia, the managing partner of EFG DRA Hudson Heritage. George Carfagno, who's quarterbacked this project from the beginning, is here with us this evening, as is Peter Wise, our attorney, and Stu Messinger from Chazen Engineering. Thank you for providing the opportunity for a special meeting this evening. We very much appreciate that. We have a video presentation, a slide presentation, which will kind of walk us back through some of the history of the property, a lot of photographs, and this has been a presentation that's been here before. Many of you have seen it. New members have not, obviously. But it's good as a refresher just to kind of take a walk back through the project and what the history has been leading up to this point. It's hard to believe that it's been, George and I were recounting the timing. For developers, it always seems like a lifetime that these projects take to get approved, no matter how fast they go. But we've owned the property since about November of 2013, so it's coming up on 4 years that we bought the property. Again, in one breath, it seems like a blink of an eye, and in another, it seems like a lifetime, because there's so many complications with a project like this. It's been about 2 years since we've been before the town in various aspects of scoping and various determinations with DEIS and so on and so forth. So almost to the month, it's about 2 years that we've been officially underway. So we, from that perspective, when you consider the size and the magnitude of the project, we think it's very good. We've appreciated from the very beginning the support that we've gotten from Neil and Eric and David and all of the staff and the professionals, the town board and the planning board. It's a very complex project with many onerous aspects to it, and we appreciate the support. So we'll roll through a slide presentation that'll show you, again, a little bit of what we're dealing with. For most of you have been to the property, you've seen the condition of many of these buildings, most of which are slated for demolition, but we'll run through it and just give you an update. So a little bit of a discussion on each one of these as necessary. This is a view looking up toward the admin building, which is slated for the central part of it being the core, slated for potentially conversion to some type of a boutique hotel. The grassed area in the front is the area we call the Great Lawn, which during its heyday was apparently much nicer than it looks today, and at one point was converted into a golf course. There's not a lot of history of what the Great Lawn actually looked like, but it's part of the determination that for the open space as part of the project, and there's about 65% or 65 acres of the property will be open space. This will be about 18 acres of it will be landscaped, and some determination will be made in the future as what the exact use of it will be, but it's a significant portion leading up and around to the residential area that'll be open. It's called the Great Lawn. So here's a site orientation, obviously. The Hudson River just to the left. It's about 153 acres surrounded in red, obviously fronting on Route 9 and ostensibly across the street from Marist College and just to the north of the Home Depot shopping center. There are currently about 50-some buildings on the property. A few have been demolished under our ownership. That some of the more dangerous structures along Route 9 were demolished before injuries occurred. So the main buildings are still there. There's roughly about 1.5 million square feet of existing institutional buildings that will be demolished as part of the redevelopment program. And again, there's some stats there that of some of the history of the, when the facility opened. It was closed in 2003. It's 156 acres. You can imagine, and I think most of you know over the years, with the challenges of vandalism and arson and other aspects of what goes on here. It's just a constant battle with, people scrapping and looking for, treasures of brass and copper and so on and so forth in the building. So that's a full-time job for us. This is, again, the picture down in the lower left-hand corner is what we call the core of the admin building. That's the portion of the building, and to the right on the top and the left are what we call the wings. The lower left is the portion that we intend to save and restore at some point with the developer for a boutique hotel. The other portions of the building are way beyond any ability to bring them back based on their condition and the loss of structural integrity, so they're slated for demolition. These are some interior shots of that admin building that will hopefully be converted to a boutique hotel. As dreary and scary as it looks, it's actually structurally sound. It's mostly cosmetic. It's peeling paint, it's asbestos, it's lead paint, and so on and so forth. That structurally the integrity, fortunately, is there, and we've gone a long way to try to protect that building as one or 5 or 6 buildings that we do intend to save as part of our development program. We've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to secure the outside, the windows, to try to prevent people from coming in and causing damage, starting fires. There's been a number of arsons just since we've owned the properties, and 2 or 3 buildings have been burned to the ground. But we make every attempt to try to protect these buildings that are going to be saved and restored as part of the redevelopment process. These are photographs of the largest structure on site, known as the Cheney Building. It's the building you can see most prominently from, for instance, the Home Depot parking lot. As you look north from Home Depot, you see the building. Many challenges, obviously, for demolition. It sits right in the middle of what would be and what's being proposed as the commercial area. Probably sits right about in the parking lot where the anchor for retail will be. So that's a building, again, it's intended to be demolished. Ryan Hall is down there in the area of the commercial development. It's roughly 40 to 45 acres of commercial development, and we'll get into some details on the plan in a little bit of what the master plan envisions, but Ryan Hall is another structure that is really just way beyond repair. It's had a number of flooding issues. There was sewage that penetrated the building from the state, who still has about 150 acres to our east up the hill. It's another building that we intend to be demolished as part of the redevelopment program. These are photographs of the powerhouse, which is in the upper reaches of the property, sit up in the area that's we propose to be residential. This is another building that will be demolished under the redevelopment plan. It's a big target for scrappers and those looking to find artifacts that could be valuable for scrapping, copper, brass, and so forth. These are some photographs of what was the Snow Rehabilitation Center. This building sits down in the area next to Ryan Hall and Cheney. It's part of the grouping of buildings that largely occupy the 40 or 45 acres that are slated for commercial development. You'll see a lot of photographs of that building on the internet. The swimming pool still has water in it. There are floating artifacts from the facility in the pool. Frankly, it's a mess. These are miscellaneous shots of the upper area, that combination of craftsman type shops. There was an electrical shop, a plumbing shop, a mortuary, a mattress factory, repair shop. Again, these buildings have been severely compromised. Most of the roofs have been deteriorated over many, many years. Vandals have penetrated them on almost every instance. The floors are deteriorated. Many of them have pancaked and fallen into the basements. There's a couple of just some general interior shots that you can get a sense of really how bad it is. These are fairly typical of many of the buildings that are left on the site. Okay, so this brings us to our redevelopment proposal, which is the drawing that you see on the board. The lower section, roughly 40 acres of the property, is slated for the commercial retail development, which is envisioned at about 350,000 square feet. That does not include the boutique hotel, which is the admin building that'll be converted to probably 80 to 100 hotel rooms. So it's 350,000 square feet, including an anchor store, which is, of course, the largest box that you see down there in the area highlighted on that slide that's in the red dotted outline south of the property, adjacent to Home Depot. So just north of Home Depot, moving up toward Hyde Park, the first 40 acres or so. Commercial development, largely food and beverage, Route 9. Most of those smaller buildings would be restaurant pads along Route 9, servicing the general population, Marist, CIA, and Route 9 traffic. The upper reaches of the property, most of what you see in yellow and the area that's highlighted in the yellow dotted line, that is 750 units of residential, which include 500 apartment rental units, 225 townhomes, and 25 single-family residences. And again, the hospitality aspect is up in what we call the northern part of the property, which is the 80,000 square feet of admin building that'll be converted to a boutique hotel. As I indicated earlier, there's about 65 acres of what will be some type of public and private combination open space, including the 18-acre restoration of the Great Lawn, which is shown somewhat in the center of the property, just north of the commercial area and west of the boutique hotel, the admin building. There's a series of about just slightly under 4 miles of pedestrian trails throughout the property. Lost the mic, there it is. A little bit difficult to tell, but it's the red lines that run through the property, look like veins. Those are trails through the property that ultimately, hopefully, will lead to the walkway over the Hudson through the old rail line that's in the rear of the property. So many, many miles of walking trails, very pedestrian friendly, linking the residential to the commercial area. Again, this is a mixed use design, very pedestrian friendly, connecting the lower portion, which is commercial, to the upper portion, which is exclusively residential and hospitality. As I mentioned earlier, there are 6 structures, only 6, unfortunately. So many of the rest of them are just beyond repair, that are intended to be used for some portion of the redevelopment. The first one being the admin building, which I've mentioned, which will convert to some type of a hospitality, catering type facility. SHPO had asked us to include the North Tower, which is a kind of a slender section, almost a leaning Tower of Pisa, if you will, type size structure that was the corner of the north wing of the admin building. We intend to use as some type of a lookout or some type of a museum-type structure. The director's residence was another building that we thought was probably too far gone, but was very important to SHPO. They asked us to save it. That's down there in the commercial area. We're actually talking to the Dutchess County Historical Society. We hope that we're able to work that out so that they can relocate their facility there. That's a structure that we hope and expect to save. The former library, which is up in the rear portion of the property, the entertainment hall, and Avery Chapel. We think that those buildings are conducive to, as part of an amenity package for the residential, the 750 units up there, so they'll be restored and rebuilt as part of some type of a common area for recreation and swimming pool perhaps added up there, whatever recreation would be associated with the residential. And these are slides that show all of the various buildings that I just mentioned that we intend to save. Again, top left is the admin building, bottom left another shot of that, the North Tower there in the center, which is a unique structure, the director's residence, which I think is about 15,000, George, about 15,000 square feet. The slides to the right there are both the director's residence. The chapel, again, these pictures were taken quite a while ago. We've since cleared all the debris and brush away from these buildings so that they were easier for us to patrol. We've boarded up all the windows with the most efficient security system that we know that can close up buildings, and we patrol it regularly to try to save. And there's a shot of them. All of the windows on the first 3 floors are somewhat barricaded from the outside. I think we've probably spent somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000 to $350,000 to barricade those windows on all those structures in an attempt to protect them from scrappers as we move through the process of approvals and ultimately hope to restore those buildings. And here you see the buildings that we've cleared all of that vegetation. Again, it's easier to spot people who are trying to break into the buildings as they try to remove artifacts and leave them outside, so it's made it easier for us. I mean, they get up there on top of the roofs, they tear out the copper flashing, they create leaks in the roofs, which, we've repaired several buildings, including this one, where we've done a portion of the roofs and some of the brickwork to attempt to, during this process, at least stabilize these buildings. And again, there's an aerial shot. That's the main wing of the admin building. It's about 80,000 square feet. We think it'll make a wonderful hotel overlooking the Great Lawn and the 18 acres overlooking the Hudson River. This is a commercial rendering of essentially if you were flying over the Hudson River, if you were in a drone, a helicopter view, if you will, looking at the commercial along Route 9. We've relocated the entrance on the development plan to the northern reaches of the commercial area compared to where it is today. So Home Depot would be to the right of the screen, the far right, the left would be the new entrance, wrapping around the road with serpentine up to the residential, up to the left and the rear, an anchor tenant in the background with the restaurants and associated retail along Route 9 in the front. Again, very walkable, very pedestrian friendly. The yellow would be walking trails from one to the other, so that it's a open, kind of an open air, very pedestrian friendly feel to it. These are some shots of some initial demolition that occurred last year in July. These are the structures along Route 9 that were some of the worst, and with the town's assistance and working with the state, I was able to obtain the demolition permits to take those buildings down before anyone was able to get hurt there, which was terrific. Okay, and this is just a list of our consultants who have worked tirelessly to bring us to this point on a project that, again, has many, many challenges. We, again, appreciate the support of both the town board, the planning board. The staff here has been terrific. Neil, Eric, David, everybody that's been involved in this understands, I think, the urgency and the necessity to develop a property like this that has laid fallow since 2003. Any questions for us?
I think for the new members of the board, that kind of nets out the history, what's going on, what's transpired, what you've done to try and maintain what's there to, so we can move forward on this project. So I think I appreciate that very much. Let me just go around the board, say any questions. We'll start with Carl.
Nothing major, and we've seen the plan over time. I don't know do you have any kind of timeline you're looking to, you do additional demolition and move forward?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, it's, the world of, we've always felt that the driver here is commercial, that the commercial part of this property will drive the success of the rest of it. Every day, the world of retail is changing, it's challenging. Companies like Amazon and others are changing the way we all do business, and it is a changing environment. We still think that commercial is going to drive the day. We are starting to have some discussions with potential users for the property now that there's light at the end of the tunnel. We're almost there through the secret process. Looking forward to coming in for site plan approval. So we do believe that on the heels of working through this process, that we will begin the site planning process back to back. So we don't expect that there will be any time lag in between. As soon as we're finished here, it's on to site plan.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Ben?
I had a question. You mentioned the powerhouse. So apparently there had to be underground thermal piping that supplied the heat or steam, whatever, to the other buildings. How much of an effect does that have on what's going on with the property, on the ground level?
Sure, it's a great question. So there's over 2 miles of steam tunnels on the property that traverse the property from one end to the other, feeding many of the buildings. A lot of them will be removed as part of the construction. All of them have been sealed at this point from us so that we do the best we can. I mean, when I tell you that they're up there with, they'll set up generators, they bring sledgehammers, they're trying to burn through it with torches, they're doing, you name it, is they just think there's something in there that they want. I think a lot of people have made a career for the last 10 years or so out of scrapping these buildings and these tunnels, but a lot of them will be abandoned during the redevelopment process. Some of them will be abandoned in place depending on where they are, but there's been an exhaustive study to determine, based on maps and other information that we have historically, of what's there and how it's going to proceed on a going forward basis.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay. I think that you said that the key driver here will be the commercial, and this is a pretty large building for an anchor store, and I know that the way that the whole commercial area is going, big box stores seem to be in danger. I mean, I don't know if that's a fact, but that seems to be the trend. Now, if you can't locate a big box store, what will that do to your plans?
That's a great question. The commercial, we do believe the commercial drives the entire development, and we do believe that an anchor drives the commercial. So without an anchor, it's challenging, to say the least, from a financial standpoint in terms of construction loans and permanent financing. We're very confident there is an anchor out there. It may not be as large of a box as is shown there. That box is about 150,000 square feet. That's the size of that box. That's a box that could accommodate everything from Costco to Walmart. So we're not saying that any of those are in the mix, but we're talking to anybody that'll listen in terms of who would be a user, because there are changes every day. Amazon bought Whole Foods. Who they're buying next, none of us know. We think that ultimately it'll be food driven in one way or another, whether it's some kind of a remix of some of the bigger stores that are retooling every day how they do business and how they look at things. We all have to eat. We don't have to go shopping and pick up some of the things that we're doing today. So Amazon is really changing the way we do things, but we think it'll be food related.
Okay.
Nicole?
I don't really have a question. I'm just glad that someone's doing something with that property. I've lived in this area my whole life. I'm a graduate of Marist. and that's been a bit of an eyesore. So I believe this is going to be great for you and for the community. I can't wait to see it come together.
Thank you. We've actually had many meetings with Maris. We met with Dennis Murray many, many times over the course of the time that he was still active at the campus. We've met with the current president of Maris. Obviously, the neighbor that they are, it's important for them. It's important for the town. It's important for for a lot of reasons. And we've
And
taken.
that hotel will be great.
Yeah, that hotel.
Maris.
There's an enormous demand for hotel. We did a hospitality study. There's definitely a demand. Dennis was kind enough to share the hotel room demand based on graduations and other issues at the campus, and it's one of the drivers why we thought there could be a real adaptive reuse of the admin building as a hotel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Peter?
This is an ambitious undertaking. If you can pull it off, it would definitely be an asset, not only just to our community, but to the whole Hudson Valley. My only question is, the last time that we met, I raised a concern about the way that the development master plan was worded. So there was a certain phrase in there which I believed was both ambiguous and contradictory. Now, when you have a legal document, ambiguity and contradiction alone can cause serious problems in the future. I didn't really know until a few days ago that we were going to be addressing this project. So I had this, also, plus all the appendices to go through. But I can tell you that the question I raised was about the wording, which I believe fundamentally changes the character and intent.
You're talking about the amendment that was in.
It was not an amendment. It was part of the zoning ordinance that was rewritten.
No, that's what I'm talking about, yes. Yeah, we're on the same page, yeah. No, I haven't forgotten it. I have not forgotten
haven't received a response, and clearly my concern is that to accept it as it's written, it doesn't make any sense. Because, again, it's both contradictory and ambiguous, and it has to do, I think, with the future disposition of the properties. I can't remember whether it had to do with the subdivision.
Yeah, you had sent me the note, and my intention was to take that up with David going forward. I mean, the only thing you were asked to do tonight is a recommendation on the development master plan, not on the zoning text itself. The board's already done that. This is just about the plan itself. But you had followed up. You had sent me an email, and it's my intention to take that up with David going forward.
It was some time ago.
Yeah.
My concern is that if we can do this without impunity, I'm fine. But again, I believe that the way that the master plan, that part of the master plan is written, fundamentally changes the intent. Either by could be pure accident. But whenever you have sentences that are over 50 words, I always get, it's like a snake eating itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I recall the conversation, and it was actually during the discussion on the board's recommendation some months ago on the text amendment portion of it. That is still before the town board. They have not acted. They won't act until the findings are done. But again, it's my intention to take that up with David and the town board going forward. I haven't forgotten about that. Right.
Well, that's why I'm here.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Andy, anything at this point?
No, I'll just say that we've done, a pretty thorough review of the master plan as it's laid out. The applicant has done a lot of work. Obviously, there's details to be worked out in site plan review, but I think at this point, I'm comfortable with the master plan as it is.
Okay, thank you. I think we're good.
I don't know if David has any further comment?
No, not at this time. This is really more of a technical review at this point from the master plan, so.
And you're in tune with what Neil was talking about with regards
Yes,
to...
the amendment itself hasn't been adopted and won't be until, the board can't do anything with the amendment until the secret process is completed. So now that the secret process is looking like it's going to wrap up, and it should be soon, we can turn to that and incorporate it into the final.
I think Peter was correct. I remember looking at it, and there was a little odd wording. I didn't think that it wasn't going to take a whole lot of wordsmithing, but yeah.
It was beyond odd.
Get it down to less than 50 words?
Pardon me?
You get it down to less than a 50-word sentence?
Actually, if you got a 50-word sentence, you probably got 2 sentences.
You think?
Or paragraph.
Or 3.
Okay. Carl?
Well, I move that the planning board convey a positive recommendation that the town board approve the proposed development master plan for the Hudson Heritage Project.
Okay.
Second.
To moved and seconded, the planning board conveys a positive recommendation that the town board approve the proposed development master plan for the Hudson Heritage Project. I call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, staff, very much appreciate everybody's consideration.
Thank you. That's great. We got off to a good start with 2 very far-reaching projects, I think, and it'll be good. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we terminate the meeting.
Okay, we moved and seconded, we terminate the meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Thanks, everybody.